Entrepreneurship
on 702.
Andisa Ramavhunga is here with me in studio. He's Group Chief Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting. He is going to be finalizing our conversation for this year and, of course, laying the ground for the conversation we start in the new year. And we're looking at building a superior business, integrating strategy, organizational design, and leadership. Andisa, good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Aubrey.
We consolidate this evening.
It's been a long year.
It has been a long year.
Yeah.
It has been a long year. We're pulling everything together this year, and the conversations that we've been having. We are yours.
Yeah.
We are your eggs. Fry us.
Thank you, Aubrey. Thank you, Aubrey. And I can't stress enough how thankful I am for this opportunity to always at least contribute my little piece of knowledge and genius, however unstructured or however convoluted. But this is very important because there is a method to this madness that we are doing. When we started some many moons ago, we did say that strategy is about value creation, but it does not live in isolation. There's the strategy part of it that answers how you create and capture the value, because that's the definition of strategy. At least we've used as a basis to have a conversation. We then moved on to say to strategy by itself is meaningless. It's only through organizational design, aka operating model, that you give it action. And we went into a very big, I think, roadshow unpacking what the value, the organizational design is. And at the tail end, we spoke about leadership. And our listeners must take that into consideration to say, throughout history, these are the concepts that when put together and when put together, they create what we call sustainable and value creating organization. And by the way, they reinforce each other. And hence for us, it's quite important that when we talk, we don't talk one over the other. We might not exhaust each and every topic within each one of these concepts, but let's give a broad view and appetize the listeners so that we spark that thought within them and for them to go and dig much, much more information. So we started defining this value creation and capturing, and we went back. If you go back, we said how you measure value is the revenue you create, and how you capture value is the surplus, the profit that you make at the end of the year. And really the aim of strategy is to drive a wedge between that revenue and the cost line. And there's a concept we came to talk about to say there's the willingness to pay. And if that willingness to pay to the customer, by the way, it's the willingness of the customer to pay for whatever services and products, and we'll come to define it as value proposition, which is somewhat different, but for lack of a better word, we use it interchangeably. If the price is lower than the willingness to pay, you tend to almost push the limits of your profits. And if your willingness to sell, by the way, is much, much higher, the willingness to sell, these are your suppliers and your employees, if that is as low as possible, and then you are able to have to drive your cost line so that it gets closer to that, and that's how you create value. And really strategy is about doing exactly that. But strategy is misconstrued. That's another topic we had spoken about, because there is a difference between what I call planning and strategy. And a lot of people talk about planning interchangeably with strategy. Yeah. And strategy is really around value creation. And for you to really know that you are now grappling with issues of strategy, there's the 5 reinforcing questions, if you remember, way back, that we spoke about, defined by, or at least explored by Roger Martin and Leffley, that if you are not at any point defining your winning aspiration, right, defining where you need to play and how you're going to win in that playing field and what capabilities you should have and what organizational system you have, you're not talking any strategy. If you're still talking about, we need to have an incentive scheme, or we need to build a new plant, or we need to
those are operational.
Those are they're important things, because there is an element of strategy that results into planning. But unfortunately for people, they tend to do it the other way around, do a lot of these planning things without really taking it back to say, how does this add to the conversation of value creation? So I'm not by any means saying planning is not
but you are saying that understand when you're in a strategic conversation
is less about planning, it's more about value creation.
Gotcha.
And value creation is about aspirations.
Right.
It's about where to play, more importantly, where to play and how you're going to win in that playing field, right? And what sort of capabilities, and I call them competitive advantage, that you have over whoever you are competing with. And more importantly, how do you then have an organization system that reinforces all these other question? But we went on then to say, look, for you to have that strategy, you need to look at those 9 building blocks, right? Because you will see all of them talk to what Roger, Martin, and Leslie spoke about. To a certain extent, some of them talk to the operating model, but largely it's the business model. And there, you remember, there was that desirability element, which is about market segments, it's about the value proposition, how you manage those customers within your segments, and channels, how do they access your product, how do they buy, how does it get delivered, and so forth. And we also then spoke about the back end of your business, which is really about, do you understand the critical tasks or the work that needs to be done to deliver on your value proposition. And we spoke about strategic partners that you need. We also spoke about key resources you will need in executing. That is typically where some of the financial comes from, largely CAPEX, right? But there's some OPEX because there's some people there's some tangible IP that you need.
Sure.
There's offices that you need to get and all those stuff. And we spoke the viability element. When you put all of these things together, the next question you need to ask yourself is, can we make money? And what I like, I think we delved deep. This year, we had a conversation around pricing, right? How do you use that as a strategic lever? And we explored various ways of pricing to say, gone are the days where you just do cost plus margin.
Yes.
And then you price. How you then drive that wedge, as I said, between your price and willingness to pay. There are other things you can play around. Things like providing freemiums, things like providing the product for free, but charging for usage of the product. Things like having a very cheap product that you put up, but charging for consumables. Those are subscription, by the way, is another way, and I'd invite our listeners to go back to, because I thought that was quite exciting, around how you use pricing to then determine or create that extra value, because this is what, when we talk about the top line, the revenue line, that's how you then drive that wedge between willingness to pay and price, and that allows you obviously to create your margin. But the other very important one that we spoke about, and I cannot stress enough, right, is in that desirability element. We did say that it's all about competition. If you remember, we had a conversation around, there's really only 3 ways that you compete. It's either, by the way, as an entrepreneur, that you are aware of it, or you are in the rata that you are in as a consequence of where you find yourself in, subjected to that way of competing, because there is no way you can run a business and not think about how you're competing. It's through costs, low cost. So, and what it means to be low cost is that you need to be obviously the lowest service provider of that product, because otherwise you're not a low cost provider. Some other guys will come in and eat your lunch. Yeah. Or you can differentiate your value proposition, right? And the ways that you can differentiate is by the product itself, where you do a very quality product, a very superior product. It could be how you service people, the after sales bit. It could be the channel differentiation, how people are able to access. Maybe it's everywhere and anywhere. You've got that shelf space. So there are a number of ways that you need to think about when you differentiate. And we also spoke about that one that I love the most. That's called Blue Ocean Strategy.
Yes.
Called value innovation, where you drive both low cost and differentiation. And how you really do that is understanding factors of competition within your industry. And all you're trying to do there is to eliminate or reduce some of those factors.
We had a conversation last week with an entrepreneur who's in the solar space. And we were talking precisely about that kind of innovation.
Yeah.
Precisely about how do you, in a space where you can get caught up in the commodification of what you supply, how can you provide the innovation that puts you into that blue ocean sort of space?
Yes.
One of the things he said, which is really echoing what you're saying now, is that first you've got to be very clear, strategically speaking, about what it is that you are offering. What is your value proposition? Are you selling panels and batteries and inverters? Or are you selling the optimization of those products? And it became clearer to me that that's probably why you started us on the conversation around strategy, because you can't go into that kind of differentiation and innovation, particularly around pricing, around really clarifying your value proposition, if you don't have a clear strategy.
Yeah.
And what came out of that conversation was that he first had to know what his various market segments are.
Yeah.
And in each market segment, what exactly is he providing?
Yeah.
Is he providing a product in one market segment, and is he geared for that?
Yeah.
Or is he providing the consultative services that include after sales management and care, for which he then charges a slightly different premium, which is a different business? Yes, the products might be the same, but the business becomes a totally different business altogether. You gear yourself up totally differently, and therefore rationalize your business in a totally different way. I get a sense that's what you're talking about.
No, absolutely. He's just answered the way to play question, and simultaneously with that answered the how to win in that market, because you need to be clear, right, to say I'm for lack of a better segmentation model, to say that my target market would be LSM, say 2 to 4, right? So we know 2 to 4, they're earning, but they're not the highest of earners. And there I'm offering panels. One, you need to deliver them at that price. And obviously you need to offer certain things, not more than just the product, right? Around, if you remember, now we're going to the science of value proposition design, which is really understanding what the customer jobs are. What is it that these people worry about from a functional point of view, from a social point of view, from the last one is social, and then it's the risk part of view. What is it that they're worried about, right? The emotional part. And so you need to package them in that way to say, if I'm offering a solar solution to a market LSM 1.4 that lives in certain, what is it that they worry about? What sort of functional, and when I say functional utility, it's how do they purchase this thing? How do they consume it and use it on a day-to-day basis? How do they dispose of it if they need to dispose? And therefore, how do they afterwards service it as well? That's just all functional jobs, right, that are being done. But there's also the emotional side of it, as I've spoken to it. Is this thing safe, right? Will that electricity last me compared to my prepaid, the way I used it? Because when I'm at work and I'm traveling, I don't want my kids to, when they get home, they don't have some form of power for insulation or for cooking or for whatever they are. Those are all risks that are associated with that particular, and there's the social ones, right? Because you can't say LSM 1 to 2 are not environmental aware, because those are other jobs, right? That or at least what I call gains, which are about benefits, right? If you align to the green movement and you are in that particular target market, are those things at play? So again, when you design your value proposition, is really understanding what are the customer jobs, what pains are you relieving, what gains are you providing, and you just mirror it with your product, because your product also has the utility element. You need to think about the benefits element, which are the gains, and the pain relieving element. And again, we have a very elaborate episode, if you remember, on this, and we've used a number of other examples around Uber, around flying, for example. And I like what you said now. around the Blue Ocean strategy now that says if you think about the low-cost airline and how it was introduced, it's very much a value innovation concept, right? Because all they did in there, they took all those factors that they thought mattered not to their clients.
Yeah.
They reduced some or eliminated some. They created new ones and then enhanced other ones, and therefore making competition redundant. Because remember, all of a sudden they're not competing with airlines, but they're competing with people who are driving cars.
Right.
And by the way, they are beating them now because all of a sudden they can offer speed as a functional utility.
Right.
Because flying low cost is as good as, if you fly low cost to Durban, is as good as driving in terms of price wise, right? They can price it there. But you also eliminate other things that you don't think people value, like lounges, like food in the plane. They can always buy it for themselves. So those are, again, competitive factors that you can reduce or uplift in design of your value proposition, and a number of other elements, examples we can make on this. But I guess the big point, and I'm saying there is an episode of it where we ventilated on this, but the so what message is that you can't be in business and do not understand how you are competing. It's either you're competing on low cost, and low cost means exactly that. Everything you do must deliver a low cost.
You must be geared for that.
You must be geared for it.
Let me invite our listeners to be part of this conversation. 011-883-0702. We are recapping and, I suppose, closing the conversation for the year as we look at issues of integrating strategy, organizational design, and of course leadership. We're going to go into leadership in a few moments' time. And I suppose that has, as part of its connectedness or variant, the issue of culture. Because I remember you said something very, very important, that culture eats strategy for lunch. If we don't have the right culture, there are issues. But I really want to ask you to join in on 011-883-0702 as I speak to Andisa Ramavhunga, the Group Chief Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting. I want to get a sense as to what are some of the pertinent issues that have made an indelible mark in your thinking about your business journey, about your entrepreneurial journey. Perhaps some of the things that we're talking about now. Would love to hear your thoughts. 011-883-0702. Is there a specific thing that really transformed the way that you think about business, about entrepreneurship, about your engagement with some of the concepts we're talking about now? Maybe you got a simpler understanding, simplified things a little bit more. And maybe even as you simplified things, you saw opportunities for growth, scaling. I mean, we talked about scaling at some point. And I'd love to take those calls. 011-883-0702. My guest is Andisa Ramavhunga. He's a Group Chief Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting. And I'd really love to take your calls around some of those issues. 011-883-0702. You are going to go into leadership, because that one for me was a very, very important conversation.
Important one, yeah. Let me ask you a question, the one that you pose now to the listeners. Because if you are running a business today, I think there's always, if you are interested in sustainable value creation, there are three questions you always ask yourself. Am I confident in the strategy that I have, or do I think it can significantly improve? If there's a tick, the question is, do I have the right organization to deliver on the strategy? Because that's where the rubber hits the road. Or is the issue in the way that I'm leading that conversation? And hence why the reason why these three things are always working in tandem. Or as a reflective leader, you always need to, when you assess yourself, is to say, am I in business? Do I understand the business I'm in? Am I creating value? If not, is the issue in the strategy itself, or is it in the way that I've really designed the organization, or is it me? and that comes to the leadership piece. But before Bob Masango, I go to the leadership piece. I think let's exhaust a bit the operating model one, because it's also very important that we spoke about.
It's the work that must be done.
The work now that needs to be done. Remember when I spoke strategy? I spoke feasibility. Sorry, not feasibility.
Viability.
sort of feasibility, right? So there's desirability, there's viability. Remember, the viability is about your product, and
right.
People
want.
Sorry,
will they pay?
The desirability, and it's about desire, right? I should understand these things much better. It's about how attractive is your product to your value proposition, your product to your market segments, right? Where through now that we've discussed is creating that solution problem fit or market product fit, right? We spoke, if you remember, when we spoke feasibility, we say there are critical tasks. There's work that needs to be done. That is the starting point of designing your organization. Because if you can map out in a value chain, even better, if you can go even in deeper formats, when you take this one out, you then need to ask a couple of questions around the work that needs to be done. The first element you need to talk about is the suppliers, right? You started mentioning them in the feasibility element of your business model canvas. Here is that which work can I do in-house? Which work do I need to outsource? Right?
Yeah.
If I need to outsource it, what does that look like? How do I manage it? Right? How I derive the best value of the work that I need to do internally? How am I going to structure an organization to deliver on that work? What type of people do I need? How do I structure them in terms of boxes now? Who reports to who? How long is the line of reporting? Are jobs linearly defined or are they narrow? I mean, all those things you need to grapple with when you design your organization. You need to now answer questions around locations. Remember we had a conversation around location?
Yeah.
Even if it's in the same building, do you think about your front end? Use it as a channel, your back end as where the work that needs to be done, how that work gets laid out so that the product and the information moves much quicker, because again, you will be saving time and cost, right, in laying this out. Do you put together a management system? Remember Leslie spoke about it in one of the questions, right, to say, do you put together an organizational management system, which is around how you performance manage the organization? How do you effect governance, the delegation of authority? Who has what delegation? Who can make what decision, right?
Yeah.
How often do you review strategies or strategy as a system? If you remember, we spoke about that. How do you do budgeting? How do you invest in projects? How do you source material? Gone are the days, by the way, of just taking money out of the till and say, I'm getting more equipment.
Yeah.
You need to do a whole lot of business case around it, right?
Yeah.
Is the market there for it? Am I squeezing or am I battling? When I buy it at this, what does it mean? Can I make the money back and make or add into that value creation I spoke about? I mean, you need to do a whole lot of other suppliers who can do this. What are the risks? What is the lifespan? So again, there's a decision making matrix that you need to think about when you invest in buying a car or buying an extra equipment, in extra stove, or an extra, or opening an extra shop in your. Again, those are part and parcels of your management systems and around how you make decision making. And then the one that you love, by the way, is the culture. What sort of culture must we build in this organization? Okay, the one that I missed out now a bit is about information and information management. And how do you do that? What sort of IT tools you need to put for the various parts of the work that needs to be done, or the critical task.
Yeah.
Again, those are the things, or the blueprint of putting together an operating model. And these things, you don't make them in isolation. All of them needs to talk back to that desirable element, to say, whatever I'm putting in, it needs to talk to whether my customer wants it. Are they willing to pay for it? Do I price better because I have this thing? So it all needs to be
on that, Andisa. And I think this is so important, what you're saying, that sometimes the scientific approach to entrepreneurship can feel a little fragmented. It can feel a little silo-y, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
And I think that this conversation needs for us to emphasize the fact that all of these are functions of each other.
They reinforce each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And part of what I think makes businesses fail, particularly from people who approach business scientifically, is that idea that I'm going to do this and then finish it, and then this and then finish it, and then this and that finish it. But what I'm hearing you say is that there's got to be an integrated approach.
In a continuous review.
Absolutely.
That's why you need people.
Yeah.
In your business, right?
Because my sense is that for the purpose of explaining concepts, we break them down into silos.
Yes.
But the practice of these things suggests that there needs to be a constant integration and a consciousness of integration. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely, Aubrey. I mean, I'll take it back to that value creation. How you design your value proposition. Remember, we spoke now about understanding customer jobs that needs to be done, pain relievers and gain relievers. When you then come back to the feasibility side and defining the critical task, they need to talk to that.
Yes.
As I've mentioned, if you are, let's take the solar guy.
Yeah.
By the way, if he, and I don't know his business sounds very exciting. If his market segment is LSM, say 1 to 4, for lack of.
It was quite high. It was much higher. Yeah.
Yeah. And we know with LSM 1 to 3, they're typically rural. They do this. Then you have to worry about a couple of things. One, on the functional side of things. How easy do you make it for them to access? And by the way, it means you need to understand the characteristics of those customers. Right?
Yes.
So for example, things like maybe broadband penetration is not the highest. The education levels are not the highest. The question is then, how do you solve that pain? And that pain could be, okay, I need to have maybe a rural shop, a channel of some sort that goes with people who can speak, who are savvy in this very technical environment, but who can lay it down for the Makoko who's sitting in there. Again, now that is now a capability you are building within. And now you understand the work that needs to be done, right? We need shops there. Those shops need to have integration to the backend. You should be able to lend the thing. And more importantly, can you make it work at the price points?
Yes.
And this is where now you start looking at strategic service providers. Can I find people around there that I can work with? Because maybe it's much easier to get the components at source and assemble them at source. Because guess what? It takes out the logistics price to it and the storage price to it. That would then increase the price. I don't know whether I'm making sense.
No, sure.
So that you can see the interconnect.
Yes.
Therefore, your work that needs to be done to deliver your value proposition is a function of whether you understand your value proposition very well. And that understanding comes out of understanding your clients, the pains that they feel, and some of the gains that they perceive.
I want to talk to Khopocho in Springs on the line. Good evening to you, Khopocho.
Evening, Aubrey and your guest.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Yes, I'm new in the security company and project, so I will need some advice, especially when you are a new person in a business like this. Because
sorry, Khopocho, you're in the new what business?
A security company and project.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So our challenge is, you can see competition is too high. And I also want to ask your guest, what must I do in my business that I can, the business can last for at least for 3 years. My business can run for 3 years without collapsing.
I hear you. New business. He is himself a new business owner, I suppose, Khopocho, in the security space. There's a lot of competition in that space, and he's just looking to get to at least the 3-year mark, a psychological sort of mark that for many businesses. Andisa, any questions for Khopocho?
Look, I'm assuming, by the way, it's physical security, which is labor intensive. You need to move that labor around and so forth, right? Again, the next question is the ammunition. I know the ammunition is. We've just had some national issues with the ammunition now, and how though those ones are sourced. But for me, it's very deliberate, and I don't want to sound doom and gloom because I don't know that industry very well. And when we talk about attractiveness of an industry, it's exactly that, right? Because the question is, can you, or are you clear what you're competing on? If you know what I mean, do you think you can become a low-cost service provider? And that now talks back to what the conversation I've been having with Aubrey, that says, do you think you can get personnel cheaper? You think you can move them cheaper? You think you can get the weapons and the ammunitions cheaper? Do you think you can leverage some technology in terms of access control and other things much cheaper than what the next guy can do? Because if you are then competing on price, you just need to be the cheapest guy that's in there. And I'm not sure whether you are tendering or not, because tendering would have some element of commoditizing some of the requirements of your business. Or are you differentiating? I mean, can you hire task force people? Your market segment, maybe it's VIP.
Pay them 2 million rand a month.
Maybe it's VIP. It's VIP.
I can't say yes,
protection. And by the way,
say.
and by the way, it means you can charge the price that you want, because that segment of the market, it's very scared. That's the reason they'll get highly, and they want people that they know have been in that sort of situations and have got that sort of experience. With obviously the armory that comes with that is also very different. And I guess the prices are high. Even this is where now you differentiate, right? Or there's then the value innovation stuff that I spoke about. I mean, have you understood to say what are really the sources of competition? And maybe I'll give you a trick that you can do if you are tendering. Just look at the common stuff of compliance, right? The minimum requirements, capabilities that they need. You'll see, Guti, those are all the capabilities that want to. Are there some that you think, but these ones are not really required by the client? Because then the issue, it becomes around educating whoever's tendering and writing the spec to say, but actually here you don't need to have maybe 10 people, but for this type of site, you need 4 people, and you've got a very scientific way of determining that number, and you can demonstrate it to them. And I say this with humility. I don't know your business, but if you're making money, you can give us a call, and we can help you delve deep into these things and facilitate workshops. And
I'm going to let you ask you the final question, please, Kopojo.
Yeah. The last question, if we need to get in touch with the Ntiyiso consultants, can I get all information, like a contact number?
Yeah, no, for sure. We'll definitely give you that at the end of the conversation. If you just keep listening, Kopojo, and just keep a pen handy and ready for those contact details, yeah?
Thank you very much.
Kopojo in Springs, much appreciated.
By the way, what I forgot to tell him as well, that you can innovate through customer relations management, right? Networking.
Yeah.
It's one way of creating, particularly in the security business, because people are buying trust there. It's not I mean, I'm thinking in my house now, I can't just get any Tom, Dick and Harry. Maybe branding is very important in there because I'm a consumer of security. But in those elements as well, customer relations management is a very critical.
Yeah. I want to ask you a really, really, really basic question about how we generally think about our businesses, our entrepreneurship ventures. There's a part of me that believes that we've always understood business to be about the consumer of whatever product or service going to the provider of that product or service. In other words, the proverbial spaza shop in our minds.
Yeah.
There's a counter, there's all sorts of products behind me, and people are coming to me to buy the stuff.
Yeah.
And so what has happened is that we haven't really engaged actively with the world of the consumer in order for us to integrate ourselves in that
you
market.
Have to understand intimately.
Absolutely.
Even anticipate future requirements of the customer.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And what I tend to see in conversations we've had and places we've spoken to entrepreneurship about is that even the line of questioning is still very much based on what can I do to make customers come to me?
Yeah.
Whereas I'm starting to get a sense that the mindset needs to shift to say that what do I do to go into the market, go into the market and make myself indispensable there in the market,
and other people
rather than people coming.
Right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Think Ferrari, think Steinway,
Yeah.
think Harley Davidson. I would even argue, think Beetle if they're still around, right? Because those people have created really a cult product, and it's again one of the ways you differentiate yourself. Mini. Oh.
I mean, that's a cult product.
It's a very cult product. I mean, those people, whenever they're launching a Mini, I'm sure there are people who are clamoring and creating queues, trying to buy this thing. Apple is
that's right. Yeah.
Harley Davidson with their community, and I mean, a guy who rides a Harley Davidson will probably have a second one as well. And part of that customer engagement and relationship management, it's these cultural inculcating or indoctrinating events where you're creating this fanatic part of, and that one is obviously you can't do it weak. You need to do it from a function of branding. You need to start having a good brand, and that brand, by the way, more often than not, it's probably backed by a very good product. But you start there are a number of big brands, by the way, Bob Masango, that are competing just on image. I mean, think Nike. I mean, a shoe is a commodity, right? I mean, there's nothing special about a shoe, and more often than not, it's probably made in Cambodia. Sorry, they got attacked now. Cambodia, China, and then what they do is just stick a label in it, and there's nothing that stops us from doing this. I mean, look at Matosa and what is done. Look at Black Coffee and what is done. I mean, Black Coffee is a fantastic brand, right? I still don't even understand his music. I'm not even sure that I enjoy it when I listen to it, but I just wanna view it for just the grandness of it. Whenever they say there's a new Black Coffee thing, I'll be honest that it's not something that I will go to at first, but whenever there's a hype around it, I want to be part of that movement and so forth. So it's actually even possible for African-based businesses, township-based businesses. I mean, I remember when I grew up, and again, I don't know what happened to Uwantino Sichaba, Lokshin culture. That thing was phenomenal. And those guys, you see that they built a big brand. I don't know what else failed in that ecosystem, by the way, because you'll find that the product was good, the branding, and they figured the way that they're going to differentiate, which is through branding. But maybe the work to be done was not understood very well. And maybe it's the organization itself. These locations, do you understand where the sewing is going to happen? The material is where it's going to be sourced. How do you organize and manage this? It could be a function of leadership itself, right? I wouldn't know. The culture of the organization is very important. But all I'm saying is that there are many examples where you actually don't need to just draw in people. Maybe initially you do, but you think strategically different to say, ultimately I want to create a community, because there are those strong brands that, for the life of me, they've done a very good job in creating a culture. And that is, by the way, through a good branding and a good customer relations management.
I want us to, as we close, on the note that we are on now, and that is the active penetration of market spaces versus a passive relationship with a market. What can unlock that? What can unlock that kind of curiosity in the most natural way, if I can put it that way? In other words, my sense is that most entrepreneurs in South Africa at the founder stage are really still very passive. I might get into trouble for this. But what I'm wanting to find out, is there a particular thing, a lever that we can pull that changes the mindset, that says we need a little more aggression, we need a little more asbangene kind of.
Well, it's a function of leadership. That's what we spoke about, right? And leadership, maybe just quickly, if you remember, we said, and let me park the collaboration part when we spoke through Linda Hill, how you become an architect of capabilities of collaboration and innovation, how you become a bridger between yourself and the organization, how you become a catalyst to mobilize the entire ecosystem, including stakeholders that are outside your business,
Yep.
right? There are those 6 mindsets we spoke about. And one of the last mindset one was personal development. Those are things that this is when you know what you are a leader. We said it's one. The first one is setting direction. It's about vision. It's about mission. It's about strategy. The second one is about aligning the organization, developing the right culture, developing the right organizational design, and developing talent. Is mobilization through people, through other leaders. How do you harness that talent? How do you determine team composition, that the rhythm part of it? How do you engage your board or your superiors if you have one? How do you connect with stakeholders? But that final one that says personal development or personal effectiveness, that needs to be at the top of the mindset of the leader. And how you cultivate that is our last conversation on emotional intelligence. Because remember, there it's about self-awareness, it's about awareness of others, it's about self-management, it's also about management of others, which is relationship management. So my only simple answer, Aubrey, is that you have to be curious, right? Because even that element of your aspect of life, you have to be curious to know what is this thing called emotional intelligence, and how can I use it to make me a better leader. And that one is a function of, again, the spirituality part, because consciousness is exactly that. It's always striving to know much more than you know. So, but I can't stress it enough, Aubrey.
How do we get in touch with you?
So you can get in touch with me at info@ntiyisoconsulting.co.za. Alternatively, our website has got our information, which is www.ntiyisoconsulting.co.za.
Andisa Ramavhunga, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And what a great year we've had. I think that there's a lot of awareness and consciousness around business and what it actually involves at a scientific level, I would argue. And thank you so much for sharing all of this information. We'll see you next year.
Thank you, Aubrey, and Happy New Year. Merry Christmas to everyone, and a prosperous one as we go into 2026.
Thank you so much.